There's a real problem when talking about religion in the West because somewhere along the way, Western Christianity seems to have gotten it all wrong. Instead of using the story and message of Christ as a vehicle for understanding the reality which transcends the iconography, we have gotten locked into a feudal relationship with the parking lot god. The parking lot god is the deity you pray to when you are driving to the grocery store and hoping to get a good spot. He is the figure you ask for forgiveness for your inevitable mistakes, which, if he were real, would be just as much his fault as yours. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At its most basic level, the problem with the parking lot god is that he is anthropomorphized. He is a person out there with motives and feelings and judgments, just like a human being, but bigger. We are made in his image, as they like to say, which they interpret to mean that God thinks like us, acts like us, and has preferences like us. This is an untenable position to hold, and the fact that Western religious institutions are crumbling down around us is, in my opinion, directly correlated with this mistake. If we were to use classic religious terminology, we could say that they worship an idol, and the idol is nothing but themselves writ large across the sky. In this sense, their God wants what they want, and so long as they are behaving correctly, they can ask it for favors, which will be granted. Of course, the low-hanging fruit here is the critique that if God loved everyone in this way and was capable of giving you a good parking spot at Target, why doesn't he do anything about the innocent casualties of war or the victims of child sex trafficking? If conjuring something as meaningless as 20 less steps for you to take to get to the supermarket is worth his effort, surely there are more meaningful situations he would bother to resolve. This is usually where the dilemma of suffering comes into the conversation. If God exists, why is there suffering? It's a fairly common critique that the secular community poses to the traditionally religious. It's an important question, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it here because I plan on making a separate video on the topic very soon. The part that is relevant for us is that even for secular people, the parking lot god is the image that comes to mind when the word God is used. It begs the question, are these people rejecting religion in its totality, or are they just rejecting the parking lot god? The huge rise of people who classify themselves as spiritual, but not religious, seems to indicate that the latter is at play for at least some of them. So what's the alternative? If God isn't a person, then what is he? This is the fundamental question, and one which ultimately has no concrete answer, meaning there is nothing I can say to describe God in the positive sense. It would be inaccurate to call him good, or kind, or just. But neither is he not good, nor kind, nor just. He is not good and not good. This is the meaning behind the Sanskrit phrase neti neti, not this, not that. Neti neti is a way of pointing to something which is impossible to point to. God is not evil, but he is also not evil. What can this mean? Does this mean that God does not exist at all? That is certainly one way out of the paradox. If I say God is not a tree and also not a tree, you may look at me like I'm mad and drop the whole thing altogether. But you won't have solved the paradox if you were to walk away, so it's not really a solution. It's more of an abdication. There are human beings across many cultures with no prior contact with each other who point to a similar notion of what we call God. There is a there. If your intention is to understand what it is, you must conquer the paradox. I think this is where the element of faith comes in. To me, faith does not imply blind obedience or unquestioned acceptance. To me, faith is the willingness to see the paradox through. There may come a time when you decide that you have given the whole thing its proper due and walk away, but only after you have at least attempted the task. This initial suspension of disbelief is imperative because at the beginning of the paradox, you have no insight, and so it's impossible for you to know whether it's true or not. If you stop there, at your initial disbelief, you are tricking yourself into thinking that you have an answer when in fact you have not even asked the question. To take it out of its religious context and into something more widely relatable, the situation is like that of Galileo's telescope. He was attempting to prove that the moon was not a perfect sphere, as Aristotle had claimed, so he set up a telescope pointed towards the moon to show that it had mountains. But his associate, Cesare Cremonini, refused to look through it. He did not believe, and therefore he did not need to look. In this sense, faith is necessary for any intellectual or scientific endeavor. You must believe that the pursuit is worthwhile if you are ever going to come to any kind of answer. With religious questions, it becomes difficult because the level of effort required is more complicated than looking through a telescope. Knowing when you have given the topic an adequate amount of time and effort is not easily deduced. But let's return to the paradox. If we don't anthropomorphize God, turning him into just another creature, we are left with a mystery. There are no characteristics we can say about God, because the thing which we are referring to with the word God does not exist in the same way that you and I exist, and yet its presence can be deduced. The images, symbols, and metaphors of all religions are like colorful signs, which point towards something which transcends them. They are there to aid you in recognizing this thing which cannot be referenced. In this sense, God is an idea. It is the ultimate idea, but it is an idea. The mystical experience, then, is not necessarily a direct perception of God, but a realization of this ultimate idea. If you succeed in realizing the idea and begin to integrate it into your life, you are said to be following the religious path. This sounds easy. We have ideas every day, after all. The trouble is that the idea is not easily grasped, or rather, once you get to it, it is an unavoidable conclusion, but filtering out the noise and getting to the truth can be quite the task. The Buddhists describe the difficulty this way. They say, the knife cannot cut itself, the eye cannot see itself. Such a curious statement, the knife cannot cut itself. What does this have to do with God? Let's look at another religion. Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And at a different point he said, the kingdom of the Father is spread upon the earth, but men do not see it. It is both here and not here. It is all around us, yet we pass it by. We pass it by because the eye cannot see itself. The knife cannot cut itself. The idea is subjective, internal. It is us at our essence. The kingdom of heaven, it is within. It is this mystery which religion points to. There is something there, and it is up to each of us to reach out for ourselves and grasp the fruit. The problem with the parking lot God isn't just that he acts as an obstacle to seeing this truth. The problem is that human beings are prone to shaping this humanized deity into whatever form that suits them. They can say, my God does not like these things or these people, when in fact it is them that have these preferences. God does not have preferences. This isn't unique to Western Christianity. The jihadists come to mind as well, even if we can acknowledge that there are strains of Islam which avoid this pitfall. In the West, the suppression of Christian mysticism by the Protestants is how we ended up in the theologically sterile environment we find ourselves in today. In its place, our ancestors built a god of labor and judgment, a completely anthropomorphic deity. I won't cry for the loss of Western organized religion because I believe that its death is necessary, at least in its current form. It cannot see the mystery that lies beyond its symbols. It worships idols, as they say, and must fall. There is a hunger in the West, though, now that it's in decline. Hunger is uncomfortable, but ultimately useful, because it allows us to recognize that we are missing something. It isn't a cosmic valet that we are searching for, but the transcendent truth, which is hidden from us the way water is hidden from fish. It may feel like we are getting further from God as a society, but it is an illusion. You're getting closer and closer every day. Our hunger proves it. If you liked the video and want to see more, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Helps me out with the algorithm. See you in the next one.